Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Well, with Halloween approaching, I decided to look at a few scary games and see how many Halloween themed games I could get through in a month. It's probably not going to be much due to my schedule, but let's talk about Alan Wake from Remedy Games and see if it's worth playing. A lot of people, including me, do kinda miss the plot-driven games that were on the PS3 and Xbox 360. Alan Wake, on the other hand, isn't exactly the best of these games, or a good example why we missed them, though. After playing it, to be honest, while most of the areas of the game are still solid, there isn't exactly one thing I could say that is bad, for example, but the way these parts are all put together into a functioning game and what I think is supposed to be the glue for said parts hasn't aged well in the last 10 years. Let's take a look at Alan Wake, shall we? The story starts off with Alan Wake, who is a famous mystery and suspense writer on a vacation trying to overcome his writer's block. He and his wife Alice have decided to spend it in a lovely cabin next to a small town in the middle of nowhere in Washington state, the cabin existing in the middle of this lake. But shortly after arriving there, he and his wife get in a fight, causing him to storm out of said cabin, just in time for it to fall into the lake, carrying his wife with him. Alan wakes up a week later on a dark road, not knowing what's happened or what he was doing in the missing week, and finding out said cabin has been destroyed for over 20 years. But now possessed people called the Taken, who are being manipulated by the quote unquote darkness, are after him. His best weapons against these dark demons is a flashlight and a very small revolver. From there, it turns into an episodic, almost TV series plot, where Alan has to find out what's going on in town, from a crooked therapist to a psychotic FBI agent, and even some old rockers Alan befriends while in a mental institute. This game's got a lot of mysteries and a lot of characters in town to crack if Alan wants to uncover what this darkness actually is and if he wants to find a way to rescue Alice. And from that point on, the story, it does become, like I said, a TV miniseries setup, and overall it's not a bad story narratively. The characters are interesting. Alan is a nice enough and interesting guy, and the mystery is genuinely intriguing. So what about the story I don't like? Well, first off, there's a few easy to see through tropes. The doctor who says it's all in Alan's head, and we all know is lying through his teeth, the corrupt copper slash FBI agent in this case, who's overly trigger happy, seen that before. And of course, the bumbling, idiotic sidekick who should by all accounts get eaten by the monster right away, but somehow never does. We have seen these in other places and done so much better here. And some of these story scenes drag on way too long, and in some really weird ways too. It's one thing if I have to do a fetch quest or two to get to the next action scene, but there are a few scenes that have Alan just strolling down the road in the middle of the day, making it a weird as heck walking simulator. I know these scenes exist so you can see what this world is like outside at night, and that outside at night the world is perfectly fine, but these scenes go on for several minutes. It's great you're lowering that blood pressure there, Al, but this is boring. And the worst part is the licensed music in the game. It's not bad, but it doesn't add anything to it. I don't see how Lyman the Coconut or David Bowie's Rocket Man adds anything to the experience. And if you're wondering why I'm putting it in as such a huge minus, these licensed songs are the reasons why it's been pulled off digital marketplaces like Steam so many times. With that said, there are some really good original songs in this game, written by some Finnish band called Poets of the Fall that play, and one of them called The Poet and the Muse is a good way of incorporating a musical song into a video game story. Not only is the song impressive on its own right, but it's also good at getting some exposition out of the way without just having people talking. The song not only tells us what this dark present is, who fought it the last time, what has to be done to defeat it, and what Alan must do if he wants to see his wife again. It's a really great song that elevated the game story from being okay but flawed to being really good but flawed. Overall, I enjoyed the game story well enough. It had me hooked enough to binge the last few chapters, but at the same time I can't help but wonder if it would have been just better to make this a TV miniseries instead of a video game. So what is the gameplay like? Well, outside of the daytime story areas, which I've already discussed, the basic gameplay happens after the sun goes down. When the sun goes down, that's when the bad guys come out. So first part of the game's episode is always daytime, and then the time passes and the sun sets, and then Alan's got to deal with the Taken. To deal with these guys, you have to first nullify the darkness around them, usually shining your flashlight onto them for a time, or getting them into a lighted area, and then you can shoot them a few times. Your flashlight does have some limited battery life. After that, it recharges very slowly, or you can recharge it quickly by putting in new batteries. The mechanic works pretty well. It adds something other survival horror games don't have, and that is a sense of more of a style. You're always paying attention to where the lights are, where safety is, and feeling a little overwhelmed when you get to an area where you thought there would be safety only for the light to flash out. And you just don't have a flashlight to attack either. Alan can pick up flares, which cause the whole area to light up for a brief time and cause the Taken to become weak, or even just flare out whenever they get too close to the light, or flashbang grenades who just kill those unlucky enough to be near them when they go off. The setup and the puzzles to get through the stages are interesting, and I had some fun going through them. So again, what's the bad thing that didn't quite fit together? Part of a good survival horror game is watching your reserves, making sure you don't run out of ammo, because if you run out of ammo, you're monster chow. Alan Wake does two things wrong on this. Granted, I was playing on the easiest difficulty, but still, for the most part, you seem to have too much access to ammo most of the time. Again, on higher difficulties, this might not be a problem, but again, I was playing it on easy, and I always felt like I was a little bit too well stocked, except for when I wasn't. Yeah, Alan here loses his weapon more time than Samus Aran stepping foot on a new planet. Not just in between episodes, no. You can be doing just fine on a first part of the stage, heading to the next area after a cutscene drops you in an area where you're defenseless again and have to collect everything, including your flashlight, all over again. A few times is okay, but this happens way too much for me not to mention it as a major issue with this game's gameplay. Overall, I found the gameplay to be pretty decent. Not exactly thrilling, but the flashlight does help it stand apart from a lot of other survival horror games. But it's not exactly the most thrill-packed action either, unfortunately. Okay, so this is the weakest part of the game for me. Sure, 10 years ago on the Xbox 360, these graphics would have looked fantastic. People would be raving about how lifelike these seemed. But now you can see the uncanny valley and how stiff they move and just how jaggy they are. And just the dead eyes in a lot of the models. Eesh. 10 years ago, I would have probably been raving out how good the game's graphics and facial features. But now it just feels like they've aged like milk on a hot radiator. They're not the worst things ever, but they're not good. And that's still bad, because the graphics here are the glue that hold the presentation together. As far as the camera control and getting around the world, they do a decent job. I never felt like I got killed because there was something I wasn't seeing or couldn't see because of the camera. And while there were areas I got lost due to the fact that the game only gives you a compass, and some of the areas looking a bit redundant in the dark, but these were far and few between. Graphics for storytelling may not work, but they do a decent job when it comes to the gameplay. Again, some kick-ass original tunes play here and there thanks to the Poets of the Fall that make this game's soundtrack really good. And no, I'm not going to play any of it because I still don't want this video claimed. Most of the other music is more atmospheric, it gets the job done, but it's nothing I'm going to download or really want to listen outside of the game. The voices, for the most part, are top-notch and, again, do a really good job of selling this as supposed to be a TV miniseries. The acting is on par with what you would see in that, and it's actually really good.
Alan Wake. Oh, God! God! I am your biggest fan. I know people say that all the time, but I really am.
I'm glad to hear that.
Rose.
Rose, I'm looking for Mr. Stuckey. Carl Stuckey?
Carl? Of course, Mr. Wake. He must have gone to visit the restroom. He'll be back in a moment. I can't believe it.
Would I recommend Alan Wake for $15? It's hard for me to say. The story was thrilling enough, but at the same time it didn't service the gameplay as much as it should. Unlike, say, a Tomb Raider, which was, with the story and the gameplay, worked together to make it feel like it was one huge action roller coaster thrill ride. This was kind of a slow-paced and really slow down story and gameplay, and again, the graphics now, not having aged, don't really help it. But it does have some good music, it does have solid gameplay at least, and the game story does have a lot of strong points that does make me enjoy it. Not as much as I would have liked to enjoy it, but I still did enjoy it. This is a Steam wish list and wait for it to go on sale, but don't wait for too long. No telling when this game's going to get pulled off the marketplace again due to licenses expiring. At any rate, this is Tommy the Game Master, thanking you so much for watching. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. I'll see you guys later.